Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Hey Everybody podcast, episode probably 66. My wrist feels quite a bit better. It's not better, but it's better. You know what I'm saying? Um, there's a hardcore band called Converge that I really like. And on the artwork for one of their records, I remember seeing when I was younger, it said, uh, We may get better, but we'll never get well. And I think maybe they intended that to sound sadder than I took it, because I think there's a lot of positivity there that you may not ever get back all the way, but you can get better every day. Um, Anyways, there's that. Coming in hot with misunderstood philosophical concepts. That's what this podcast is about. You guys want a recommendation right off the top? I didn't take a drink of this. I love coffee. There's a new movie on Netflix called The Harder They Fall, and it's superb. It's a Western. Um, it's rated R, and I should warn you up top, it deserves that rating. Um, there were a couple moments in it that I was like, that was tough. And one's like right up top, like right at the beginning, they hit you with this scene, and you're just like, oh. But then there's a payoff right after, and there are a couple things that I just won't watch in movies, and this didn't really hit either of any of those things. Though it came close to one, I'll be honest with you. But it's a very good movie. It's a Western. If you like Westerns, I think you'll dig it. If you're familiar with the movie, obviously, there's a much bigger conversation happening around the movie about representation in cinema, which is great because the whole cast is people of color. And it's a fictionalized story about people that actually did exist historically. People often forget, I think, that the era of like the American West, where a lot of these films are set, was post Civil War. So there were a lot of newly freed black folks out there trying to make a life and that kind of thing. And it was exciting to see that in a movie. And it was really exciting that the movie was awesome. I think a lot of times I see this in like the political punk realm. I think a lot of times people ride an issue while making art that's not very good. So anytime I see someone kind of knock it out of the park addressing an issue whilst also knocking it out of the park with a great attempt at their art, I'm very excited, and I really liked this movie. I'm a big Western fan, and it was great. It was funny, and it was violent, and it was good. So if you dig Westerns, or if you're intrigued by the conversation around this particular one, it might be worth your time. What else? Oh, heavens. You guys, I often joke that I don't know what this podcast is about, and I often feel like that's true. But I think if I really had to really hone in on what is this podcast about, it would be sort of similar to what a big part of my life is about, which is thinking about how you think. Being a little more deliberate and intentional and considerate and thoughtful with the way you interact with your own mind. And some people don't do that. And I came upon a person like this Saturday. So Saturday, we go downtown to visit our favorite coffee place, a Coca Coffee, if you're in Appleton. And if you're cool, don't go there if you're not cool. So we hit the coffee place, and then we walk down to the music store, to Hyde Music, which we like a lot. My wife bought a piano book, and my son bought a new cable for his bass. And we're walking back to the car, and 2 fire engines and a police car and maybe a third or fourth vehicle come whipping down the street. Lights, sirens, they're going through reds, like they're headed somewhere with serious intent. And I thought, oh man, what a shame. Someone's having a horrible day today. Someone could be in the middle of a moment that will definitively be one of the worst of their lives. Just terrible. And I don't say that I thought that because like, oh, look at me and how compassionate. It's because like obviously that's what you'd think. Like, what else would you think? I'll tell you what else you would think. Because we just happened to be walking past the coffee place. And I'm gonna take a leap here and say a not very cool lady was walking out of the coffee place as all these sirens go by, and she turns to her friend, and I'm gonna try not to exaggerate it, but this was the tone and the vibe. She turns to her friend and she goes, "Ugh, I am so sick of sirens." And I just fortunately she was going one direction and we were going another direction. So the time when we were very, very near each other was as brief as it could be. And she was sort of past me by the time I had registered what I had just heard a human being say. And I kind of turned to my wife and she kind of turns to me because she heard it too. And we both just went, yeesh. Like, that's a human being who, best case scenario, is not thinking about how she's interacting with her own thoughts and with the world around her. Or worst case scenario, she is, and she has chosen to be the lady at the house fire going, hey, could we keep it down? Just, it blew my mind. And it reminded me that I must always think about how we're thinking. And especially what we're saying. My goodness. Because, I just, if you move through the world that way, first of all, people overhear it, and have thoughts that you might wish they weren't having about you. Second of all, I do think, if not all minds, a lot of minds do have a path they want to take because it's the easiest path. And it's sort of selfish and it's sort of not very well considered. And it's sort of, I think a lot of towns are that way too. Like if you, as a community, sort of take your hands off the wheel, your town will go in a very predictable direction. And same with, communities and that kind of thing. And I do tend to think that a lot of minds are like that. My mind is like that. That I can very quickly fall into not just like depression and anxiety and sadness, but also a very sort of, I guess, just selfishness. Just like your brain, I think, my brain, I think, is well aware that it's the only brain in there. So why wouldn't it be the most important brain everywhere? Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm sort of thankful to this lady and people like that because they do remind you of like, this is what the work is for. This is why you're reading these books. Like it's great that it's helping me with anxiety and depression and even PTSD and all that kind of stuff. But it's also great that it's helping me not go out into the world just thoughtlessly spewing out all my worst thoughts and impulses. You know what I mean? Which leads us to another recommendation. I had teased this one last week, and I know this isn't how we normally do the podcast. It's fine. We're free people. Let's do whatever feels right today. I had talked about this last week, but I didn't have the record yet, and now I do have the record. And it features what I do believe is my song of the year. I know the year's not over yet, but things do slow down in the winter. So here we have an album called You Get It All by a gentleman from Texas named Hayes Carl. I've been a fan of his for a while. Not nearly as long as he's been about the business of being Hayes Carl, but I've been a fan of his for a minute now. And this is his latest record. And it opens with a song called Nice Things. And just like last week, because that was fun, uh, go listen to it right now. There's a great video for it. And I tell you, I think it's superb. Um, Hopefully you'll just go listen to the song, but the gist is God comes down to earth, and the chorus and the title of the song is God sees what has become of the world she created, um, and she says this is why you can't have nice things. At one point she gets arrested for smoking weed. It's pretty funny, but it's also pretty profound. And there's a moment where she says, "This is why I gave you compassion and empathy." Um, and I had been listening to this song a lot and thinking about um, the fact that if we let ourselves, we can be very empathetic and compassionate and that kind of stuff. And then I encountered this lady. It reminded me of this time I was at the post office, right? And I just had to mail. I think some people had ordered some merch, which, by the way, the merch store is back open. So if you want a book or a CD or a koozie or what have you, you can head over to christophergold.com and we'll get you some merch. But this one time I was at the post office mailing some stuff out, and there was a lady 2 spots ahead of me. So it's me, this guy, this lady. And I'm really, the last few years, been into the idea of like waiting. And just, I heard the singer for a band called Not a Surf, who's really good, say that one of his concerns about phones and social media and stuff with the kids is that when he was young and he had to wait for the bus, I think there's a bus going by right now. Oh, it's garbage day. He had to wait for the bus or something. All he could do was just sit there and wait. But that was when his mind would do pretty cool stuff. He would start coming up with ideas for songs or band names or what have you. So I started being a little more intentional about that. Like when I have to wait in the doctor's office or at the post office or whatever, I try not to take out my phone. I try to just sit there and see what happens. And maybe just enjoy the break, So I'm just standing there, kind of, actively doing nothing, if that makes sense. And the woman at the front of this line is sort of struggling with a language barrier with the mail carrier at the post office. She pretty evidently does not speak English as a first language, but she's doing her best and she's doing a pretty good job. And she needs to get something to like the passport office in Madison by the end of the day. And the guy at the post office is unfortunately saying like, that can't happen. I'm really sorry, but we can't do that. And if memory serves, he was trying to explain to her that like you could get in your car though, and you could definitely make it to Madison before this office closes and just hand deliver this. And the man between me and this woman is doing that horrible thing where he's being passive aggressive, but every time he does it, he's not getting the result he wants, so he's dialing down the passive. And eventually, he's just an adult man at the post office going, So I'm sitting here in judgment of this man who's just losing his shit for A, his behavior, but B, for not realizing like this woman is definitely having a worse day than you. 100%. This woman is giving us enough information that we could at least suspect the possibility that someone might get deported today if this thing doesn't happen today. And she's struggling and she's trying, and you've never moved to another country and learned a whole different language and that kind of thing, and settle down. Like, I just, again, here's a guy given no thought to like, well, worst case scenario. Like, how long do you really think you're going to be here? An extra what? 2 minutes? 3 minutes? 5 minutes? Even if it was 10 minutes. Is that, you know what I mean? And maybe the problem is in your own life. Maybe you're thinking, oh, I got to get back to work. Well, maybe you shouldn't work for a guy who wouldn't understand that you were late because you had to go to the post office and the lady in front of you was fixing to get deported if she couldn't get to the bottom of this issue and you just had to wait 10 minutes. You know what I mean? And that guy was born same as me with compassion and empathy and that kind of thing. But he was not exposing himself to the books and the songs and the talks and the podcasts and all the various things that we're lucky enough to have now that can remind us always like, hey, this is one of the options. You could be the empathy guy, the compassion guy, the whatever guy, you know? Or you could just shut the hell up and not be the guy huffing and puffing like a child who just found out he didn't get a toy in his Happy Meal. Oh, I wanted to smack that guy. Which ironically would not be very empathetic. But such is life, you know? Let's do another recommendation because, again, we're free people. This record is called Ravine Palace, and it's by a man named Christian Sadelmeyer. And he's a fiddler, as you can tell from the cover. And he made himself an instrumental bluegrass record, and it's phenomenal. And I hope you'll listen to it. It's really, really great. I've been listening to it a ton for maybe close to a year now. It came out on Bandcamp, and I bought it there. And then the vinyl got announced, so I bought that as well. And it's really, really good. And it features mandolin from Andrew Marlin, formerly of Mandolin Orange, currently of Watch House. And when Andrew Marlin does instrumental stuff, Christian Sadelmeyer plays fiddle there too. And it's really, really good. I've been enjoying it a lot. And this sort of talk about, you know, we've talked in the past about my feelings about instrumental music and what a gift it can be in an often very chatty world, you know? Sometimes it's nice when you encounter a lady who's just sick of the sirens, or a guy who is tired of having to wait a minute while some lady tries not to get her family deported or something. It's nice to just hear a fiddle instead of another person's ideas. Even at times that I agree with those ideas, sometimes it's nice to just like, let's not talk right now. You know, let's just turn up the music and everybody shush. So yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at. I don't know how cohesive or coherent this was. I don't know if you could say this episode was about bleh. But I guess maybe the episode was about, again, you got to think about how you're thinking. You got to think about what your mind is doing and what you're letting it do. And maybe even think about what your mind chooses to do when you try not to control it. Because sometimes you get really good stuff. Sometimes that's where my songs come from sometimes. If I'm just sitting and then all of a sudden a verse comes, you know. But other times, if you're not actively steering away from sort of selfish thoughts or self-centered thoughts or just nasty thoughts, dude, like I wondered, you know, I didn't say anything obviously because I don't think that would have been my place either, but I wondered what this woman on Saturday would have done if someone had said like, hey, you know, sometimes when the sirens happen, it's because people are literally dying. You know what I mean? Like, or they're losing literally everything. Imagine if your house burned down, what that would mean, even if, you know, everyone survived, which is kind of best case scenario, that you end up with the people you love and nothing else. And I think I'm learning more and more from my conversations with people and people's reactions to the things that I say, that people don't really understand what empathy even is. Because it's not sympathy. And it's also not permission or tolerance. It's just trying to understand why someone feels the way they do or what led them to say what they said. And then you can say, and I disagree with what you did, and I disagree with what you said. But I do feel like if you can access empathy first, one, it'll keep you from saying stupid shit like I just hate the sirens. Two, It'll keep you from huffing and puffing at the post office like a giant-sized man baby. And 3, maybe when the time does come that it is appropriate that you be the voice that says, hey, I disagree. Hey, I don't think you should have done that. You'll be doing it, I think, in a much more effective way, because you're not going to hopefully get taken by surprise when the person reveals, like, well, I said that because of this or because of that. And you'll be more effective in your disagreement. And I'm seeing more and more these days that that is not people's concern. People's concern is that they be seen disagreeing in the right way, and not that they disagree effectively or in a way that is impactful. But again, what do I know? I'm barefoot right now on a Monday. I'm an idiot. Um, sometimes people take umbrage with the fact that I often call myself an idiot. And they're confused because I also use words like umbrage. But I think it's a positive thing to occasionally just remind yourself, like, right, but at the end of the day, who am I, you know? And I can still have my opinions and my thoughts, and hopefully I can help people and interact with them in a positive and effective way. But I think a lot of times I keep myself out of trouble, and I keep my head from getting a little too big, and I keep myself from being overly burdened by occasionally reminding myself, yeah, but who are you? And I know we're all important and that kind of thing. You're all very important. But we're also on a fast train to nowhere. Just find the balance within that. In the meantime, people have been asking after these mugs, and I think at some point we'll do a run of mugs. Like with everything that I make, I have to find this balance where I don't feel like people are being overcharged, but I'm making enough money to do this for a living, and the product is good. I have had people ask, like, hey man, how much do you pay to have a shirt made? And I tell them, and they go, oh dude, I'm getting shirts for like a third of that. And I'm going, I know, my wife owns one and it ripped after like a month, or the print came off. I take a lot of pride in the stuff that even if I didn't physically make it myself, I still like slap my name on it and put it out there. So we'll try to figure out the mugs. In the meantime, I'm very proud of the records I have available on my website. I'm very proud of the book. And I'm very proud of, the way house shows tend to go. So all that stuff and more, you can find information about at ChristopherGold.com. And if you dig the podcast, I appreciate that. If you want to support it and sort of keep money flowing in through the winter as shows slow down, you can do that via PayPal or Venmo. And I don't know. I would send you away with just the, listen to that Hayes Carl song and take it serious. And take a minute now and again to think about not what you're thinking, but how you're thinking. You know what I mean? Like, some people just go, well, this was my thought and I'm committed to it now. Instead of going, do I like that thought? Do I like the fact that, and she could be a lovely lady who just had like an iffy moment, or she's trying to be funny or whatever. But I wonder if this lady is stoked that people overheard her say, I'm just tired of the sirens. I wonder if the guy at the post office is pleased that 5 years later, the guy who saw me do that still kind of thinks about it and still thinks like, ugh, yuck. And I'm working on new music and some new kind of performances, some new lineups with which to present my songs, and that will all come later. But I'm excited about both. And until then, until next week, until the next show, until the whatever, I hope you guys are doing good, and I hope you got something out of this. It was loose, I know that. And my coffee's almost gone, and I got to go put some socks on. So we'll talk soon. Be good, and do it on purpose. All right.